I was the only person there consistently. I was there for 3 years. And each summer we would go through 5 or 6 workers to try and, and they're doing the hoeing. And I mean, I worked there for 3 years. All these people did it their whole life, so I don't want to complain about what hard work it was when you guys know a lot better about how physically demanding it all is. But, I mean, in an ideal world, I think organics is great, but I think in North America, because people are so disjointed from where their food comes from.
If you sprayed your apples, and you got a heck of a good crop, and I didn't spray mine, and I didn't get as good a crop, and they were wormy, and we both, and of course I got to get more for mine because I didn't produce as much as you did. Now just if they were both sitting there, whose apples do you think them people are going to buy?
I know, that's the dilemma, isn't it?
I mean,
just like the organic stuff. See,
yeah.
That's what they're trying to get away from this other stuff. But
yeah, and the organic food and that is way high.
It's just certain people will buy it because.
So are you saying that the person who doesn't spray benefits by the person who does spray, and that guy who sprays pays the cost?
Yeah, but he's benefit because he's getting a good crop. They won't even buy my apples with worms in them.
No. Bit of worms.
You know, they always
if you
taste.
Don't spray, you just don't.
Worm always tastes good when you eat an apple.
The health and environmental effects of many of the chemical pesticides are still unknown. There are so many mixed messages, it is difficult for farmers to know what information to trust.
It's very interesting how I think the media has a lot to do with what you think about anything to do with the farming, eh? They control what you think and what you're scared of and what you're not scared of.
What they say is acceptable now, 20 years from now, you might find out was a big mistake.
Still, farmers have much more information available to them today than in the past and are responding accordingly.
I have noticed since probably the early 90s, I would say, that the farmers are becoming very, very aware of the danger of the chemicals that they're handling, and they are handling it differently, and their children aren't out there doing the things that I did as a kid. Because education, I mean, you have to hear it to, grasp hold of these things are dangerous, the long latency period between exposure and disease, because as humans we tend to think that, well, it didn't make me sick today, so it's not hurting me. And I feel that education has helped, and people are much more aware.
When you go back in the earlier days, like in the 50s, for example, it was very common for farmers to be spraying and their families being, right in the same field hoeing. So that would not have been a good practice, but those are the things that we didn't know at the time. So today, like you sign a lot of these fields. If there's materials that are persistent, you would actually sign them and not let anybody into that field for a certain amount of time. And then, you could go ahead and do what you had to do. So today you have things like detasseling for the kids, for example. So you'd have to be careful about some of the insecticides you use.
In fact, current pesticide regulations require training and licensing. Now much of the pesticide application is contracted out.
Agriculture has changed a lot. Like the bigger operations, they come in with a big sprayer. They're a lot more regulated, like Bob says. Before you had something and well, I should have used a little bit more. So you've done more. But now you read the labels, and no, you're not. You are bound by the labels, but something can be ignored. But the recommendations are a lot more stringent, and your application equipment is different than what it used to be. Your spray is more controlled.
Well, most everybody that's in the agricultural sectors had to take advanced courses in pesticide spraying and that type of stuff. And they are responsible. The amount of pesticides used on farms has decreased like something like 50% in the last 20 years. And farmers now use something called IPM, which is integrated pest management. And they tend to spray after they see a problem. In the old days, they just used to broadcast spray, and that was it. And if there happened to be any bugs, no matter what they were, it kind of killed whatever was out there.
There is still debate in the scientific community about whether or not current chemicals and practices provide adequate protection. And unfortunately, there's no way to undo past exposures. Individuals who may have been heavily exposed in the past may or may not be at greater risk for disease, but perhaps by being aware of their exposures, they can take steps to ensure that they are adequately medically monitored.
To do that, you have to be aware that you need to go and have early diagnosis, or, at least have your regular yearly checkups. And I believe the medical community, our family physicians, need to be much more aware of the occupational risks and to be looking and monitoring. I feel that often men are well monitored for many of these things, or are maybe not as well as I'd like to see them monitored, but I think they get preferential treatment over women in many cases. Especially when, like if you're not in a high-risk profession, even though I believe farming is a high-risk profession for sure, I just don't think the medical community is aware of that. And I believe we have to keep working at having the doctors realize that these women have been exposed at young ages.
Clearly, the production of food is a very complex business. All of us, consumers, the government, the markets, and the farmers themselves have a stake in keeping farming healthy, financially viable, and environmentally sustainable. What is it that keeps farmers going when the odds are often against them? As one farmer said, it's hard to imagine a more important occupation than growing food to feed the nation.
Oh, I think there's a tremendous amount of pride in growing a successful crop. And you see some of these farms around here, they're absolutely just amazing. They look so nice, they treat their land so well, and because of that, the land returns to them. And I think that's a tremendous amount of satisfaction from these guys. And they battle certainly a lot of conditions. The weather and is always prime up there at the top, and they've got a tremendous amount of pride and accomplishment in what they do, and I'm sure that's a big driving force in what happens. I guess economics is something else that I think you feel pretty good when you work that close with nature. And you're able to be successful. I think you must feel pretty good at the end of the day.